guys, what is up? My name is Megan. Welcome back to my channel, and welcome if you're new. I hope you guys are doing well and staying safe, and welcome to today's video, which is another fall related video where we are going to talk about all the middle grade books I think you should read this fall. Also, side note before we start, I know my speech sounds a little weird compared to my other videos. There's just some health stuff going on, so please ignore that. And without further ado, let's talk about the 3 honorable mentions I want to talk about in this list before we get into my actual recommendations. The first honorable mention I want to talk about is The Jumpies by Tracy Batiste. Essentially, this is an honorable mention because I, for one, did not really like the book. However, most of the book community does, as it has like a 3.8 rating on Goodreads, and it very much feels like fall when you read this book. The Jumpies is the first in a series, and it's essentially about Caribbean folklore. We follow a main character who says she's not afraid of anything, and that Jumpies are just this folklore that parents use to scare their children into, you know, cooperating. However, once she enters a forest, she sees what she thinks is a Jumpy, and then throughout the story we also meet this woman who is very peculiar, and our main character thinks she is a Jumpy. It's a very fun, spooky adventure if you guys are into that kind of stuff. I think for me, I read this at a time where I didn't read a lot of middle grade, and for some inexplainable reason it kind of fell flat for me, but I know it's a very beloved book, so if you're looking for spooky vibes, it's definitely one of my honorable mentions. My next honorable mention is actually another first book in the series, and it is Pocket and Stubs, and this is by Sophie Green. And this series is beloved by the middle grade community. It has a 4.03 average on Storygraph, and I feel like everybody but me actually enjoys this, and I'm surprised I didn't really get into it, and I again cannot tell you why, but this actually follows a main character who essentially dreams of being a writer, of being a journalist, and she, along with a ghost, are going to like find mysteries in town, investigate them, and write about them. And it's essentially kind of like a paranormal middle grade with some spooky mysteries in them, and the town in itself is very atmospheric. The ghost element adds a lot of fun spooky times for the spooky season, and I also think a lot of you guys would enjoy this. Again, I don't know really why it didn't click for me. I think I gave it like a 3 or a 3.5, so it's not that bad. But yeah, definitely another honorable mention that I feel a lot of you guys would enjoy. And my last honorable mention before we move into my actual recommendations is Malamander by Thomas Taylor. This, again, first book in a series. It's called the Eerie on Sea series, and essentially we follow a main character named Herbert Lemon who works at the Lost and Found at this hotel on the Eerie on Sea, and essentially I think he was lost himself. He doesn't really know his family, hence the Lost and Found. And the story is also kind of solving mysteries surrounding the Eerie on Sea with a friend that he makes. It's very spooky. The town itself is very atmospheric, and I think that's what really sets the mood for fall, in my opinion. It's very creepy. There are creepy creatures in here, and I think it's a perfect blend of creepy middle grade. This one for me, I think it's the pacing that threw me off a little bit, but again, it was nothing major, and I really think that, you know, if you've read all the other books I'm going to recommend, this could definitely be a fun one. So now moving into my actual recommendations. My first recommendations are 2 different books by 2 different authors, but I'm going to recommend them together, and they are Dragon Mountain as well as the Percy Jackson series. Obviously, Percy Jackson is an obvious one, but I feel like it's such a comfort read. It's such like fun vibes. This is a great transitional book from summer to autumn, because the summer camp element, but also like the mysteries and the atmosphere in the camp and all the adventures Percy goes on, I could not recommend this book. However, if you have read Percy Jackson and you're looking for something with similar kind of vibes, but you don't want to reread the series, which could not be me. I am a Percy Jackson stan. I would recommend Dragon Mountain by Katie and Kevin Sang. This is about a young boy named Billy who goes to Mandarin camp in China to learn more Mandarin, as he is half Chinese, half American, and when he gets there, he learns essentially that he is bonded with a dragon, as are 3 other of his friends who he makes at camp, and it's essentially a story of 4 children and 4 dragons trying to protect the dragon realm. This is a 5-book series, and honestly I think it's a great transitional book from summer to fall as well. It is really fun, it's fast-paced. I really enjoyed the audio for this one as well, and it's just like 2 very fun vibes that include kind of a camp element, and I think they are great fall reads. You can sit down with a cup of tea, a hot chocolate, and just binge these books. Staying in the same veins, I have to recommend the Trials of Apollo series by Rick Riordan, which is in the same world as the Percy Jackson books. So if you've read Percy Jackson but haven't ventured out into the rest of the Rick Riordan verse, I recommend the Trials of Apollo. We essentially follow Apollo, who was cursed and essentially is a mortal teenage boy, and he needs to go through these, I guess, challenges or quests to gain back his right into Olympus. And I especially like these books because they are very humorous and they take a lot of what I loved about Percy Jackson and made it its own series. Apollo is a really fun character to follow, and I feel like the quest and the ambiance in this series and is definitely like fall feeling. I can't quite put my finger on why or very much express why, but I really do think that this again is a great book to read. It's part of a series. I don't remember how many books are in this one, but there's a couple, so again, you can curl up with a blanket, binge this series, and have the time of your life. I really like adventure books in the fall. It's just the vibes. So continuing on that, I have 2 more very adventure focused books to recommend. One of my recommendations is Nick Blake and the Remarkables by Angie Thomas, who is the author of The Hate U Give, which is very well known. This was her first foray into middle grade, and I absolutely love this book. I do think the first like 50 pages are a little slow, but after that you get right into the adventure. And this is a book that follows Nicole, and Nicole is a Remarkable. She knows that, and essentially Remarkables are people who have powers that live, sometimes they live within their own communities, others live within the human world, as does Nick. Nick is alone with her father, and the story really takes off right after Nick's birthday, when she asked her dad to help her learn about her powers and he refuses, and then, pardon my language, but shit hits the fan with her dad, who is found guilty of something. He's taken away, and it's Nick's job to bring her dad back. Along the way, she meets friends, she learns about her powers and how strong she is, and we learn about the world. It is a fantastic read, and it's just, there are so many plot twists, and it goes in so many fun directions, and it's such a well-crafted world because you learn about the universe with Nick, and it feels very organic. It's just such a fun time, and I love what the Remarkables are, and these discussions on power, what all of that means, and we also get to see an actual remarkable world, and so it feels very fantasy filled, and it's just a vibe. Similarly, in a book I will never stop recommending is Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Austin. This is one of my all-time favorite middle grade books. There are currently 2 books out. The 3rd should be coming out in 2024. Amari and the Night Brothers, if you've never heard me speak of this book, follows a young girl named Amari who has a brother who has gone missing. The police don't want really to help because her brother is black. They're like, he probably got into some criminal activity. Maybe he's just missing, but Amari thinks there's something else going on. One day she finds this suitcase in her home, and it brings her to a supernatural world, and she takes part in this world. She kind of gains access as a junior agent, and she learns about her powers that she had herself in a world she never knew existed. This is fun, it's adventurous, the world is incredible. This is kind of a mix of Nevermore, Percy Jackson, and Men in Black. That's kind of how I pitched this book, and the pacing of this is wonderful. I think there's a lot of important messages about racism and so many other, you know, important topics and in this day and age, and I will never not recommend B.B. Alston, so had to talk about this yet again. Another recommendation that's obvious but could not be mentioned is Nevermore, The Trials of Morgan Crow by Jessica Townsend. Everybody has heard of this book. I've spoken about this book countless times, but the reason I recommend this for the fall season is because this book goes through a lot of seasons, and the way it describes the world that Morgan is in just is so vivid that you can see yourself there. When it talks about the holidays, when it talks about the different seasons and the different kinds of weather that they have in Nevermore, it is so atmospheric that you just feel like you are there, and I feel like it's the best time to reread it if you've read it already. Try the audiobook as well. It's bloody fantastic, and I could not talk about this. Moving on. Another middle grade series which I did not shut up about when I read was The Mystery of Black Hollow Lane by Julia Noble. This is a 2-book series, and it follows a young girl whose mom basically brings her to boarding school, and there she essentially learns about herself. There are mysteries, there's secret societies, she makes some friends. It's a complete and utter vibe. It is spooky. There are like weird things going on, and our main character takes it upon herself with her friends to discover what is happening. She learns about some family secrets, some secrets about the secret societies. It is a fun time. If you want to read something that feels kind of like Harry Potter but is different at the same time, this is definitely one I would recommend. It is just the best middle grade mystery I have ever read. I love this book to pieces, and it's very underhyped in my opinion, so I definitely recommend this series. Another spooky series which had to be recommended is the City of Ghosts series by Victoria Schwab. This currently has 3 books, and I think that's it. This follows Cassidy Blake, and Cassidy can see ghosts, and her job is essentially to help them go beyond the veil so that they can move into afterlife, because some of them are stuck in this in-between world. And the ironic thing is that Cassidy's parents have a ghost hunting show, but none of them have the actual ability to see ghosts. And so we follow her with her parents as they travel to different places in the world to film this show and talk about ghosts. And we also follow Cassidy and her friend who's a ghost as they accompany other ghosts through the veil. There's a lot of crazy adventures, a lot of evil ghosts, and it's just the best time. It's so fun. I love this series, and I really need to reread it. It's like the best for spooky season. If you're looking for an October series to read, recommend. Another book I have to recommend is Frostheart by Jamie Littler. This I read because of Gavin at How to Train Your Gavin. Really good decision on my part. This is more of a snowy read, so I definitely recommend reading it maybe in November when it starts to be more chilly, when there's some snow and it's technically still fall. This follows a boy named Ash who basically has no idea who his parents are. They went on this expedition and never came back, and so Ash is stuck in this world, and essentially he ends up going on a quest with a bunch of different people to find his parents. There are like creepy monsters, and just he is guarded by a yeti throughout his adventure. It's just very mystical. It is snowy. It's action-packed. I was shooketh a few times during this, and essentially it's Ash figuring himself out while trying to find his parents and discovering a bunch of different communities and parts of the world that he was never able to see. It's beautiful. He learns about his powers, which his community was not accepting of, and so there's just a whole lot of things going on here. I maybe did not pitch this book as well as I could have, but I feel like this is one that you just need to go into and enjoy the ride. This is a 3-book series as well. We are down to the last 2 recommendations. One of them is another obvious one, and it is the Pages & Co. series by Anna James, which is technically finished now. There were 6 books total in this series, and this follows a main character named Tilly, who is a book wanderer, so essentially she can go into books or she can bring book characters out. She lives with her grandparents in a bookstore, and Tilly essentially has not met her mom. She is on the lookout for her mom, who has disappeared, and so the first book is Tilly adventuring to find her mom, and we go through that adventure with Tilly. This involves a lot of Tilly traveling into different childhood classics like The Wizard of Oz. We have Anne of Green Gables, Alice in Wonderland, and throughout the series you go through different adventures with Tilly and her friends. The first 3 books follow Tilly, and then the last 3 follow Oscar, but you still have Milo. My bad. We follow Milo in the last 3 books, but we also see Tilly and Oscar, who are the 2 main characters of this one. This is obviously a great fall read because of the atmosphere of books. I feel like books about books are fun to read in the fall. They set a wonderful tone, and it just feels very cozy. It is fun. It's more of a low stakes series, although there is this underlying mystery that goes throughout the books, which should get resolved in book 6. And the last and final book I want to talk about is The Castle of Tangled Magic by Sophie Anderson. As you can tell, it feels very fall just by the cover, as do all Sophie Anderson books, so you can take this as read Sophie Anderson. This one specifically follows a young girl named Olya, and this is based off a Russian tale, I believe. And she goes in this castle where there is tangled magic, and it brings her to this world, and she needs to solve a mystery. This book is a lot harder for me to explain. It's mostly just go into it for the vibe, and then you'll be going on an incredible adventure. That's all I'm gonna say. Sophie Anderson is like the queen of middle grade. She is amazing at writing beautiful books, and there's really fun illustrations throughout her books as well. Just trust me on this one. So that is it for all my recommendations of middle grade books you should read this fall. Soon I will also upload a TBR that I have of middle grade books I want to read this fall, and a lot of other fall related content will also be coming your way. If you guys did not know, I'm also starting to host a middle grade book club in the month of October. I will leave the announcement in the description as well as in the cards if you want to join me. That is it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Happy reading, guys. Bye!